Jing-Mei. The minute our train leaves the Hong Kong border and enters Shenzhen, China, I feel different. I can feel the skin on my forehead tingling, my blood rushing through the new course, my bones aching with a familiar old pain. And I think my mother was right. I am becoming Chinese. Cannot be helped, my mother said when I was 15 and had vigorously denied that I had any Chinese whatsoever below my skin. I was a sophomore at Galileo High in San Francisco, and all my Caucasian friends agreed. I was about as Chinese as they were. But my mother had studied at a famous nursing school in Shanghai, and she said she knew all about genetics. So there was no doubt in her mind whether I agreed or not. Once you are born Chinese, you cannot help but feel and think Chinese. Someday you will see, said my mother. It is in your blood, waiting to be let go. And when she said this, I saw myself transforming like a werewolf, a mutant tag of DNA suddenly triggered, replicating itself insidiously into a syndrome, a cluster of telltale Chinese behaviors. All those things my mother did to embarrass me, hugging with store owners, pecking her mouth with a toothpick in public, being colorblind to the fact that lemon yellow and pale pink are not good combinations for winter clothes. But today I realize I've never really known what it means to be Chinese. I am 36 years old. My mother is dead and I am on a train, carrying with me her dreams of coming home. I am going to China. We are first going to Guangzhou, my 72-year-old father, Kang Wu, and I, where we will visit his aunt, whom he has not seen since he was 10 years old. And I don't know whether it's the prospect of seeing his aunt or if it's because he's back in China, but now he looks like he's a young boy. So innocent and happy, I want to button his sweater and pat his head. We are sitting across from each other, separated by a little table with 2 cold cups of tea. For the first time I can ever remember, my father has tears in his eyes, and all he is seeing out the train window is a sectioned field of yellow, green and brown, a narrow canal flanking the tracks, low-rising hills, and 3 people in blue jackets riding an ox-driven cart on this early October morning. And I can't help myself. I also have misty eyes, as if I had seen this a long, long time ago and had almost forgotten. In less than 3 hours we will be in Guangzhou, which my guidebook tells me is how one properly refers to Canton these days. It seems all the cities I have heard of, except Shanghai, have changed their spellings. I think they are saying China has changed in other ways as well. Chongqing is Chongqing, and Guilin is Guilin. I have looked these names up, because after we see my father's aunt in Guangzhou, we will catch a plane to Shanghai, where I will meet my 2 half-sisters for the first time. They are my mother's twin daughter from her first marriage, little babies she was forced to abandon on a road as she was fleeing Guilin for Chongqing in 1944. That was all my mother had told me about these daughters, so they had remained babies in my mind, all these years, sitting on the side of a road, listening to bombs whistling in the distance while sucking their patient red thumbs. And it was only this year that someone found them and wrote with this joyful news. A letter came from Shanghai, addressed to my mother. When I first heard about this, that they were alive, I imagined my identical sisters transforming from little babies into 6-year-old girls. In my mind, they were seated next to each other at a table, taking turns with a fountain pen. One would write a neat row of characters, "Dearest Mama, we are alive." She would brush back her wispy bangs and hand the other sister the pen, and she would write, "Come get us, please hurry." Of course, they could not know that my mother had died 3 months before, suddenly, when a blood vessel in her brain burst. One minute she was talking to my father, complaining about the tenants upstairs, scheming how to evict them under the pretense that the relatives from China were moving in. The next minute she was holding her head, her eyes squeezed shut, groping for the sofa, and then crumpling softly to the floor with flattering hands. So my father had been the first one to open the letter, a long letter it turned out, and they did call her Mama. They said they always revered her as their true mother. They kept a framed picture of her. They told her about their life, from my time my mother last saw them on the road, leaving Guilin, to when they were finally found. And the letter had broken my father's heart so much, these daughters calling my mother from another life he never knew, that he gave the letter to my mother's old friend, Auntie Lindo, and asked her to write back and tell my sisters, in the gentlest way possible, that my mother was dead. But instead, Auntie Lindo took the letter to the Joy Luck Club and discussed with Auntie Ying and Auntie Anne-May what should be done, because they had known for many years about my mother's search for her twin daughters, her endless hope. Auntie Lindo and the others cried over this double tragedy of losing my mother 3 months before and now again. And so they couldn't help but think of some miracle, some possible way of reviving her from the dead, so my mother could fulfill her dream. So this is what they wrote to my sisters in Shanghai. Dearest daughters, I too have never forgotten you in my memory or in my heart. I never gave up hope that we would see each other again in our joyous reunion. I am only sorry it has been too long. I want to tell you everything about my life since I last saw you. I want to tell you this when our family comes to see you in China. They signed it with my mother's name. It wasn't until all this had been done that they first told me about my sisters. The letter they received, the one they wrote back. They'll think she's coming then, I murmured. And I had imagined my sister now being 10 or 11, jumping up and down, holding hands, their pigtails bouncing, excited that their mother, was coming, whereas my mother was dead. How can you say she's not coming in a letter? Said Auntie Lindo. She is their mother. She is your mother. You must be the one to tell them. All these years they have been dreaming of her, and I thought she was right. But then I started dreaming too of my mother and my sisters and how it would be if I arrived in Shanghai. All these years, while they waited to be found, I had lived with my mother and then had lost her. I imagined seeing my sisters at the airport. They would be standing on their tiptoes, looking anxiously, scanning from one dark head to another as we got off the plane. And I would recognize them instantly, their faces with the identical worried look. Jaya, sister, we are here. I saw myself saying in my poor version of Chinese. Where is Mama? They would say, and look around, still smiling, to flushed and eager faces. Is she hiding? And this would have been like my mother, to stand behind just a bit, to tease a little and make people's patience pull a little on their hearts. I would shake my head and tell my sister she was not hiding. Oh, that must be Mama, no? Or my sisters would whisper excitedly, pointing to another small woman, completely engulfed in a tower of presents. And that too would have been like my mother, to bring mountains of gifts, food and toys for children, all bought on sale, shunning thanks, saying the gifts were nothing, and later turning the labels over to show my sisters Calvin Klein, 100% wool. I imagined myself starting to say, Sisters, I am sorry, I have come alone, and before I could tell them, they could see it in my face, they were wailing, pulling their hair, their lips twisted in pain as they ran away from me. And then I saw myself getting back on the plane and coming home. After I had dreamed this scene many times, watching their despair turn from horror into anger, I begged Auntie Lindo to write another letter, and at first she refused. How can I say she is dead? I cannot write this, said Auntie Lindo with a stubborn look. But it is cruel to have them believe she's coming on the plane, I said. When they see it is just me, they'll hate me. Hate you? Cannot be, she was scowling. You are their own sister, their only family. You don't understand, I protested. What I don't understand, she said, and I whispered, they'll think I am responsible, that she died because I didn't appreciate her. And Auntie Lindo looked satisfied and sad at the same time, as if this were true and I had finally realized it. She sat down for an hour, and then she stood up, and when she stood up, she handed me a 2-page letter. She had tears in her eyes. I realized that the very thing I had feared she had done. So even if she had written the news of my mother's death in English, I wouldn't have had the heart to read it. Thank you, I whispered. The landscape has become grey, filled with low, flat cement buildings, old factories, and then trucks and more trucks filled with trains like ours passing by in the opposite direction. I see platforms crowded with people wearing drab western clothes and with spots of bright colors, little children wearing pink and yellow, red and peach. And there are soldiers in olive green and red, and old ladies in grey tops and pants that stop mid-calf. We are in Guangzhou. Before the train even comes to a stop, people are bringing down their belongings from above their seats. For a moment, there is a dangerous shower of heavy suitcases laden with gifts to relatives, half-broken boxes wrapped in miles of string to keep the contents from spilling out, plastic bags filled with yarn and vegetables, and packages of dried mushrooms and camera cases. And then we are caught in a stream of people rushing, shoving, pushing us along, until you find yourselves in one of a dozen lines waiting to go through customs. I feel as if I were getting on the number 30 Stockton bus in San Francisco. I am in China, I remind myself. And somehow the crowds don't bother me. It feels right. I start pushing too. I take out the declaration forms and my passport. Wu, it says at the top, and below that, Jing-Mei, who was born in California, USA in 1951. I wonder if the customs people will question whether I am the same person as in the passport photo. In this picture, my chin-length hair is swept back and artfully styled. I am wearing false eyelashes, eyeshadow and lip liner. My cheeks are hollowed out by bronze blusher. But I had not expected the heat in October, and now my hair hangs limp with the humidity. I wear no makeup. In Hong Kong, my mascara had melted into dark circles and everything else had felt like layers of grease. So today my face is plain, unadorned except for a thin mist of shiny sweat on my forehead and nose. Even without makeup, I could never pass for true Chinese. I stand 5'6" and my head pokes above the crowd so that I am eye level only with other tourists. My mother once told me my height came from my grandfather, who was a northerner and may have even had some Mongol blood. This is what your grandmother once told me, explained my mother, but now it is too late to ask her. They are all dead, your grandparents, your uncles and their wives and children, all killed in the war when a bomb fell on our house. So many generations in one instant. She had said this so matter-of-factly that I thought she had long since gotten over any grief she had, and then I wondered how she knew they were all dead. Maybe they left the house before the bomb fell, I suggested. No, said my mother, our whole family is gone, it is just you and I. But how do you know? Some of them could have escaped. Cannot be, said my mother, this time almost angry, and then her frown was washed over by a puzzled blank look, and she began to talk as if she were trying to remember where she had misplaced something. I went back to the house. I kept looking up to where the house used to be. And it wasn't a house, just the sky. And underneath my feet, were 4 stories of burned bricks and wood, of the life of our house. Then, off to the side, I saw things blown into the yard, nothing valuable. There was a bed someone used to sleep in, really just a metal frame, twisted up at one corner. And a book, I don't know what kind, because every page had turned black. And I saw a teacup which was unbroken but filled with ashes. And then I found my doll, with her hands and legs broken, her hair burned off. When I was a little girl, I had cried for that doll, seeing it all alone in the store window, and my mother had bought it for me. It was an American doll with yellow hair. It could turn its legs and arms. The eyes moved up and down. And when I married and left my family home, I gave the doll to my youngest niece, because she was like me. She cried if that doll was not with her always. Do you see? If she was in the house with that doll, her parents were there, and so everybody was there, waiting together, because that's how our family was. The woman in the customs booth stares at my documents, then glances at me briefly, and with 2 quick movements stamps everything and sternly nods me along. And soon my father and I find ourselves in a large area filled with thousands of people and suitcases. I feel lost and my father looks helpless. Excuse me, I say to a man who looks like an American. Can you tell me where I can get a taxi? He mumbles something that sounds Swedish or Dutch. Shoyen, I hear a piercing voice shout from behind me. An old woman in a yellow knit beret is holding up a pink plastic bag filled with wrapped trinkets. I guess she's trying to sell us something. But my father is staring down at this tiny sparrow of a woman, squinting into her eyes. And then his eyes widen, his face opens up, and he smiles like a pleased little boy. Ai, auntie, he says softly. Shoyan, cools my grey out. I think it's funny she has just called my father Little Wild Goose. It must be his baby milk name, the name used to discourage ghosts from stealing children. They clasp each other's hands, they do not hug, and hold on like this, taking turns saying, Look at you, you are so old, look how old you've become. They are both crying openly, laughing at the same time, and I bite my lip, trying not to cry. I'm afraid to feel their joy, because I am thinking how different our arrival in Shanghai will be tomorrow, how awkward it will feel. Now he beams and points to a Polaroid picture of my father. My father had wisely sent pictures when he wrote and said we were coming. See how smart she was. She seems to intone as she compares the picture to my father. In the letter, my father had said we would call her from the hotel once we arrived, so this is a surprise that they've come to meet us. I wonder if my sisters will be at the airport. It's only then that I remember the camera. I'd meant to take a picture of my father and his aunt the moment they met. It's not too late. Here, stand together over here, I say, holding up the Polaroid. The camera flashes and I hand them the snapshot. I and my father still stand close together, each of them holding a corner of the picture, watching as their images begin to form. They are almost reverentially quiet. Ai is only 5 years older than my father, which makes her around 77. But she looks ancient, shrunken, a mummified relic. Her thin hair is pure white. Her teeth are brown with decay. So much for stories of Chinese women looking young forever, I think to myself. Now Ai is screwing to me. Jana, so big already. She looks up at me and my full height and then peers into her pink plastic bag, her gifts to us. I have figured out, as if she is wondering what she will give to me now that I am so old and big. Then she grabs my elbow with her sharp pink pincer-like grasp and turns me around. A man and woman in their 50s are shaking hands with my father, everybody smiling and saying, they are Ai's oldest son and his wife. And standing next to them are 4 other people around my age and a little girl who's around 10. The introductions go by so fast, all I know is that one of them is Ai's grandson with his wife, and the other is her granddaughter with her husband, and the little girl is Lily, Ai's great-granddaughter. Ai and my father speak the Mandarin dialect from their childhood, but the rest of the family speaks only the Cantonese of their village. I understand only Mandarin, but can't speak it that well. So Ai and my father gossip on their strain in Mandarin, exchanging news about people from their old village, and they stop only occasionally to talk to the rest of us, sometimes in Cantonese, sometimes in English. Oh, it is as I suspected, says my father, turning to me. He died last summer, and I already understood this. I just don't know who this person, Li Gong, is. I feel as if I were in the United Nations and the translators had run amok. Hello, I say to the little girl. My name is Jing-Mei. But the little girl squirms to look away, causing her parents to laugh in embarrassment. I try to think of Cantonese words I can say to her, stuff I learned from friends in Chinatown, but all I can think of are swear words, terms for body functions, and short phrases like tastes good, tastes like garbage, and she's really ugly. And then I have another plan. I hold up the Polaroid camera, beckoning Lily with my finger. She immediately jumps forward, places one hand on her hip in the manner of a fashion model, jots out her chest, and flashes me a toothy smile. As soon as I take the picture, she is standing next to me, jumping and giggling every few seconds as she watches herself appear on the greenish film. By the time we hail taxis for the ride to the hotel, Lily is holding tight onto my hand, pulling me along. In the taxi, Ai talks non-stop, so I have no chance to ask her about the different sites we are passing by. You wrote and said you would come only for 1 day, says Ai to my father in an agitated tone. 1 day? How can you see your family in 1 day? Taishan is many hours' drive from Guangzhou, and this idea to call us when you arrive. This is nonsense. We have no telephone. My heart races a little. I wonder if Auntie Lindo told my sisters she would call from the hotel in Shanghai. Ai continues to scold my father. I was so beside myself as my son almost turned heaven and earth upside from trying to think of a way. So we decided the best was for us to take the bus from Taishan and come into Guangzhou, meet you right from the start. And now I'm holding my breath as the taxi driver dodges between trucks and buses, honking his horn constantly. We seem to be on some sort of long freeway overpass, like a bridge above the city. I can see row after row of apartments, each floor cluttered with laundry hanging out to dry on the balcony. We pass a public bus with people jammed in so tight their faces are nearly wedged against the window. And then I see the skyline of what must be downtown Guangzhou. From a distance, it looks like a major American city with high-rises and construction going on everywhere. As we slow down in the more congested part of the city, I see scores of little shops, dark inside, lined with counters and shelves. And then there is a building, its front laced with scaffolding made of bamboo poles held together with plastic strips. Men and women are standing on narrow platforms, scraping the sides, working without safety straps or helmets. Oh, would OSHA have a field day here, I think. A shrill voice rises up again. So it's a shame you can't see your village, our house. My sons have been quite successful, selling our vegetables in the free market. We had enough these last few years to build a big house, 3 stories, all of new brick, big enough for our whole family and then some. And every year the money is even better. You Americans aren't the only ones who know how to get rich. The taxi stops and I assume we've arrived, but then I peer out at what looks like a grander version of the Hyatt Regency. This is communist China? I wonder out loud. And then I shake my head toward my father. This must be the wrong hotel. I quickly pull out our itinerary, travel tickets and reservations. I'd explicitly instructed my travel agent to choose something inexpensive in the $30 to $40 range. I'm sure of this. And there it says on our itinerary, Garden Hotel, Huangshi Donglu. Well, our travel agent had better to be prepared to eat the extra, that's all I have to say. The hotel was magnificent. A bellboy complete with uniform and sharp creased cap jumps forward and begins to carry our bags into the lobby. Inside, the hotel looks like an orgy of shopping arcades and restaurants, all encased in granite and glass. And rather than be impressed, I am worried about the expense, as well as the appearance it must give IE, that we rich Americans cannot be without our luxuries even for one night. But when I step up to the reservation desk, ready to haggle over this booking mistake, it is confirmed. Our rooms are prepaid, $34 each. I feel sheepish, and IE and the others seem delighted by our temporary surroundings. Lily is looking wide-eyed at an arcade filled with video games. Our whole family crowds into one elevator, and the bellboy waits, saying he will meet us on the 18th floor. As soon as the elevator door shuts, everybody becomes very quiet. When the door finally opens again, everybody talks at once in what sounds like relieved voices. I have the feeling IE and the others have never been on such a long elevator ride. Our rooms are next to each other and are identical. The racks, drapes, bedspreads are all in shades of taupe. There is a color television with remote control panels built into the lamp table between the two twin beds. The bathroom has marble walls and floors. I find a built-in wet bar with a small refrigerator stocked with Heineken beer, Coke Classic and 7-Up, mini bottles of Johnny Walker Red, Bacardi rum and Smirnoff vodka, and packets of M&M's, honey roasted cashews and Cadbury chocolate bars. And again I say out loud, this is communist China? My father comes into my room. They decided we should just stay here and visit, he says, shrugging his shoulders. They say less trouble that way, more time to talk. What about dinner? I ask. I've been envisioning my first real Chinese feast for many days already, a big banquet with one of those soups steaming out of a carved wintermelon, chicken wrapped in a clay, Peking duck and the works. My father walks over and picks up a room service book next to a travel and leisure magazine. He flips through the pages quickly and then points to the menu. This is what they want, says my father. So it is decided. We are going to dine tonight in our rooms with our family, sharing hamburgers, french fries and apple pie. Ai and her family are browsing the shops while we clean up. After a hot ride on the train, I'm eager for a shower and cooler clothes. The hotel has provided little packets of shampoo, which upon opening I discover is the consistency and color of hoisin sauce. This is more like it, I think. This is China. And I rub some in my damp hair. Standing in the shower, I realize this is the first time I've been by myself in what seems like days. But instead of feeling relieved, I feel forlorn. I think about what my mother said about activating my genes and becoming Chinese, and I wonder what she meant. Right after my mother died, I asked myself a lot of things that couldn't be answered, to force myself to grieve more. It seems as if I wanted to sustain my grief, to assure myself that I had cared deeply enough. But now I ask the questions mostly because I want to know the answers. What was that pork stuff she used to make that had the texture of sawdust? What were the names of the uncles who died in Shanghai? What had she dreamt all these years about her other daughters? All the times when she got mad at me, was she really thinking about them? Did she wish I were they? Did she regret that I wasn't? At 1 o'clock in the morning, I awake to tapping sounds on the window. I must have dozed off, and now I feel my body uncramping itself. I'm sitting on the floor, leaning against one of the twin beds. Lily is lying next to me. The others are asleep too. The others are asleep too, sprawled out on the beds and floor. I is seated at a little table, looking very sleepy, and my father is staring out the window, tapping his fingers on the glass. The last time I listened, my father was telling Ai about his life since he last saw her. How he had gone to Yenching University, later got a post with a newspaper in Chongqing, met my mother there, a young widow, how they later fled together to Shanghai to try to find my mother's family house, but there was nothing there, and then they traveled eventually to Canton, and then to Hong Kong, then Haiphong, and finally to San Francisco. So Yuan didn't tell me she was trying all these years to find her daughters, he is now saying in a quiet voice. Naturally, I did not discuss her daughters with her. I thought she was ashamed she had left them behind. Where did she leave them? Asks Ai. How were they found? I am wide awake now, although I have heard parts of the story from my mother's friends. It happened when the Japanese took over Guilin, says my father. Japanese in Guilin? Says Ai. That was never the case. Couldn't be. The Japanese never came to Guilin. Yes, that is what the newspapers reported. I know this because I was working for the news bureau at the time. The Kuomintang often told us what we could say and could not say, but we knew the Japanese had come into Guangxi province. We had sources who told us how they had captured the Wuchang Canton Railway, how they were coming overland, making very fast progress, marching toward the provincial capital. Ai looks astonished. If people did not know this, how could Suyuan know the Japanese were coming? An officer of the Kuomintang secretly warned her, explains my father. Suyuan's husband also was an officer, and everybody knew that officers and their families would be the first to be killed. So she gathered a few possessions, and in the middle of the night, she picked up her daughters and fled on foot. The babies were not even 1 year old. How could she give up those babies? Sighs Ai. Twin girls. We have never had such luck in our family. And then she yawns again. What were they named? She asks. I listen carefully. I had been planning on using just the familiar sister to address them both, but now I want to know how to pronounce their names. They have their father's surname, Wang, says my father. Their given names are Chun Yu and Chun Hua. What do the names mean? I ask. My father draws imaginary characters on the window. One means spring rain, the other spring flower. He explained in English. Because they born in the spring, and of course rain come before flower, so same order these girls are born. Your mother like a poet, don't you think? I nod my head. I see Ai nod her head forward too, but falls forward and stays there. She's breathing deeply, noisy. She's asleep. And what does Ma's name mean? I whisper. Suyuan, he says, writing more invisible characters on the glass. The way she writes it in Chinese, it means long cherished wish. Quite a fancy name, not so ordinary like flower name. See this first character, it means something like forever, never forgotten. But there is another way to write Suyuan. Sound exactly the same, but the meaning is opposite. His finger creates the brush strokes of another character. The first part look the same, never forgotten. But the last part add to first part to make the whole word mean long-held grudge. Your mother get angry with me. I tell her her name should be Grudge. My father is looking at me moist-eyed. See, I'm pretty clever too, huh? I nod, wishing I could find some way to comfort him. And what about my name? I ask. What does Jing-Mei mean? Your name also special, he says. I wonder if any name in Chinese is not something special. Jing, like excellent Jing. Not just good, it's something pure, essential, the best quality. Jing is good leftover stuff when you take impurities out of something like gold or rice or salt. So what is left? Just pure essence. And Mei, this is common Mei, as in Mei, younger sister. I think about this. My mother's long cherished wish. Me, the younger sister, who was supposed to be the essence of the others. I feed myself with the old grief, wondering how disappointed my mother must have been. Tiny Ai stirs suddenly stirs suddenly. Her head rolls and then falls back. Her mouth opens as if to answer my question. She grunts in her sleep, tucking her body more closely into the chair. So why did she abandon those babies on the road? I need to know, because now I feel abandoned too. Long time I wondered this myself, says my father, but then I read that letter from her daughters in Shanghai now, and I talked to Auntie Lindo and all the others, and then I knew. No shame in what she done. None. What happened? Your mother running away, begins my father. No, tell me in Chinese, I interrupt. Really, I can't understand. He begins to talk, still standing at the window, looking into the night. After fleeing Kuiling, your mother walked for several days, trying to find a main road. Her thought was to catch a ride on a truck or wagon, to catch enough rides until she reached Chongqing, where her husband was stationed. She had soon money and jewelry into the lining of her dress, enough, she thought, to barter rides all the way. If I am lucky, she thought, I will not have to trade the heavy gold bracelet and jade ring. Those were things from her mother, your grandmother. By the third day, she had traded nothing. The roads were filled with people, everybody running and begging for rides from passing trucks. The trucks rushed by, afraid to stop. So her mother found no rides, only the start of dysentery pains in her stomach. Her shoulders ached from the two babies swinging from scarf slings. Blisters grew on her palms and from holding the two leather suitcases. And then the blisters burst and began to bleed. After a while, she left the suitcases behind, keeping only the food and a few clothes. And later she also dropped the bags of wheat flour and rice and kept walking like this for many miles, singing songs to her little girls, until she was delirious with pain and fever. Finally, there was not one more step left in her body. She didn't have the strength to carry these babies any further. She slumped to the ground. She knew she would die of her sickness, or perhaps from thirst, from starvation, or from the Japanese, who she was sure were marching right behind her. She took the babies out of the slings and sat them on the side of the road, then lay down next to them. Your babies are so good, she said, so quiet. They smiled back, reaching their chubby hands for her, waiting to be picked up again. And then she knew she could not bear to watch her babies die with her. She saw a family with 3 young children in a cart going by. Take my babies, I beg you, she cried them, but they stared back with empty eyes and never stopped. She saw another person pass and called out again. This time a man turned around, and he had such a terrible expression. Your mother said it looked like death itself. She shivered and looked away. When the road grew quiet, she tore open the lining of her dress and stuffed jewelry under the shirt of one baby and money under the other. She reached into her pocket and drew out the photos of her family, the picture of her father and mother, the picture of herself and her husband on their wedding day. And she wrote on the back of each the names of the babies in the same message. Please care for these babies with the money and valuables provided. When it is safe to come, if you bring them to Shanghai 9 Weichanglu, the Li family will be glad to give you a generous reward. Li Suyuan and Wang Fuqi. And then she touched each baby's cheek and told her not to cry. She would go down the road to find them some food and would be back. And without looking back, she walked down the road, stumbling and crying, thinking only of this one last hope, that her daughters would be found by a kind-hearted person who would care for them. She would not allow herself to imagine anything else. She did not remember how far she walked, which direction she went, when she fainted, or how she was found. When she awoke, she was in the back of a bouncing truck with several other sick people, all moaning. And she began to scream, thinking she was now on a journey to Buddhist hell. But the fact of an American missionary lady bent over her and smiled, talking to her in a soothing language she did not understand, and yet she could somehow understand. She had been saved for no good reason, and it was now too late to go back and save her babies. When she arrived in Chongqing, she learned her husband had died 2 weeks before. She told me later she laughed when the officers told her this news. She was so delirious with madness and disease. To come so far, to lose so much, and to find nothing. I met her in a hospital. She was lying on a cot, hardly able to move. Her dysentery had drained her so thin. Had come in for my foot, my missing toe, which was cut off by a piece of falling rubble. She was talking to herself, mumbling. Look at these clothes, she said, and I saw she had on a rather unusual dress for wartime. It was silk satin, quite dirty, but there was no doubt it was a beautiful dress. "Look at this face," she said, and I saw her dusty face and hollow cheeks, her eyes shining back. "Do you see my foolish hope?" "I thought I had lost everything except these two things," she murmured, and I wondered which I would lose next, clothes or hope, hope or clothes. "But now, see here, look what is happening," she said, laughing as if all her prayers had been answered. And she was pulling hair out of her head as easily as one lifts new wheat from wet soil. It was an old peasant woman who found them. "How could I resist?" The peasant woman later told your sisters when they were older. They were still sitting obediently near where your mother had left them, looking like little fairy queens waiting for the sedan to arrive. The woman, Mei Ching, and her husband, Mei Han, lived in a stone cave. There were thousands of hidden caves like that in and around Kuelin, so secret that the people remained hidden even after the war ended. The Meis would come out of their cave every few days and forage for food supplies left on the road, and sometimes they would see something that they both agreed was a tragedy to leave behind. So one day they took back to their cave a delicately painted set of rice balls, another day a little food stove, a velvet cushion, and 2 new wedding blankets, and once it was your sisters. They were pious people, Muslims, who believed the twin babies were a sign of double luck, and were sure of this when, later in the evening, they discovered how valuable the babies were. She and her husband had never seen rings and bracelets like those, and while they admired the pictures, knowing the babies came from a good family, neither of them could read or write. It was not until many months later that Mei Ching found someone who could read the writing on the back. By then, she loved these baby girls like her own. In 1952, Mei Han, the husband, died. The twins were already 8 years old, and Mei Ching now decided it was time to find your sister's true family. She showed the girls the picture of their mother and told them they had been born into a great family, and she would take them back to see their true mother and grandparents. Mei Chang told them about the reward, but she swore she would refuse it. She loved these girls so much she only wanted them to have what they were entitled to: a better life, a fine house, educated ways. Maybe the family would let her stay on as the girls' ama. Yes, she was certain they would insist. Of course, when she found the place at 9 Wei Changlu in the old French concession, it was something completely different. It was the site of a factory building, recently constructed, and none of the workers knew what had become of the family whose house had burned down on that spot. Mei Ching could not have known, of course, that your mother and I, her new husband, had already returned to that same place in 1945 in hopes of finding both her family and her daughters. Your mother and I stayed in China until 1947. We went to many different cities, back to Kuelin, to Changsha, as far south as Kunming. She was always looking out of one corner of her eye for twin babies, 10 little girls. Later we went to Hong Kong, and when we finally left in 1949 for the United States. I think she was even looking for them on the boat. But when we arrived, she no longer talked about them. I thought, at last they have died in her heart. When letters could be openly exchanged between China and the United States, she wrote immediately to old friends in Shanghai and Kuelin. I did not know she did this. Auntie Lindo told me. But of course by then all the streets' names had changed. Some people had died, others had moved away. So it took many years to find a contact. And when she did find an old schoolmate's address and wrote asking her to look for her daughters, her friend wrote back and said this was impossible, like looking for a needle on the bottom of the ocean. How did she know her daughters were in Shanghai and not somewhere else in China? The friend, of course, did not ask, "How do you know your daughters are still alive?" So her schoolmate did not look. Finding babies lost during the war was a matter of foolish imagination, and she had no time for that. But every year, your mother wrote to different people. And this last year, I think she got a big idea in her head, to go to China and find them herself. I remember she told me, "Kang, we should go before it's too late, before we are too old." I told her we were already too old, it was already too late. I just thought she wanted to be a tourist. I didn't know she wanted to go and look for her daughters. So when I said it was too late, that must have put a terrible thought in her head that her daughters might be dead. And I think this possibility grew bigger and bigger in her head, until it killed her. Maybe it was your mother's dead spirit who guided her Shanghai schoolmate to find her daughters. Because after your mother died, the schoolmate saw your sisters, by chance, while shopping for shoes at the #1 department store on Nanjing Dong Road. She said it was like a dream, seeing those two women who looked so much alike moving down the stairs together. There was something about their facial expressions that reminded the schoolmate of your mother. She quickly walked over to them and called their names, which of course they did not recognize at first, because Mei Ching had changed their names. But your mother's friend was so sure she persisted. Are you not Wang Chun-yu and Wang Chun-hua? She asked them. And then these double image women became very excited because they remembered the names written on the back of an old photo. A photo of a young man and woman they still honored, as their much loved first parents, who had died and become spirit ghosts still roaming the earth looking for them. At the airport I am exhausted. I could not sleep last night. Ai had followed me into my room at 3 in the morning, and she instantly fell asleep on one of the twin beds, snoring with the might of a lumberjack. I lay awake thinking about my mother's story, realizing how much I have never known about her, grieving that my sisters and I had both lost her. And now at the airport, after shaking hands with everybody, waving goodbye, I think about all the different ways we leave people in this world. Cheerily waving goodbye to some at the airports, knowing we will never see each other again. Leaving others on the side of the road, hoping that we will. Finding my mother in my father's story and saying goodbye before I have a chance to know her better. Ai smiles at me as we wait for our gate to be called. She's so old. I put one arm around her and one arm around Lily. They are the same size, it seems. And then it's time. As we wave goodbye one more time and enter the waiting area, I get the sense I'm going from one funeral to another. In my hand I'm clutching a pair of tickets to Shanghai. In 2 hours we'll be there. The plane takes off. I close my eyes. How can I describe to them in my broken Chinese about our mother's life? Where should I begin? Wake up, we're here, says my father, and I wake with my heart pounding in my throat. I look out the window and we are already on the runway. It's grey outside. And now I'm walking down the steps of the plane, onto the tarmac and toward the building. If only my mother had lived long enough to be the one walking toward them. I am so nervous I cannot even feel my feet. I am just moving somehow. Somebody shouts, "She's arrived!" And then I see her. Her short hair, her small body, and that same look on her face. She has the back of her hand pressed hard against her mouth. She's crying as though she had gone through a terrible ordeal and were happy it is over. And I know it's not my mother. It is the same look she had when I was 5 and had disappeared all afternoon for such a long time, and that she was convinced I was dead. And when I miraculously appeared, sleepy-eyed, crawling from underneath my bed, she wept and laughed, biting the back of her hand to make sure it was true. And now I see her again, 2 of her, waving, and in one hand there is a photo, the Polaroid I sent them. As soon as I get beyond the gate, we run toward each other, all 3 of us embracing, all hesitations and expectations forgotten. "Mama, Mama," we all murmur as if she is among us. My sisters look at me proudly. Mei Janda, says one sister proudly to the other. The little sister has grown up. I look at their faces again and I see no trace of my mother in them. Yet they still look familiar. And now I also see what part of me is Chinese. It is so obvious. It is my family. It is in our blood. After all these years, it can finally be let go. My sisters and I stand, arms around each other, laughing and wiping the tears from each other's eyes. The flash of the Polaroid goes off and my father hands me the snapshot. My sisters and I watch quietly together, eager to see what develops. The grey-green surface changes to the bright colors of our 3 images, sharpening and deepening all at once. And although we don't speak, I know we all see it. Together we look like our mother. Her same eyes, her same mouth, open in surprise to see, at last, her long-cherished wish.